I have been in a relationship with James Jiang for 5 years, and our bond was very strong. However, during the engagement ceremony, he received a phone call from his first love. For her sake, he chose to leave me and said that we could get engaged once I returned. I merely nodded slightly and told him that once I walked out of that door, our 5 years together would become a joke. He thought I was joking, patted my hair, and went off to find his first love. When we met again, he questioned me in a husky voice about why I had left him. At that moment, I was walking happily with my new partner, laughing together. James and I were expecting a baby, and he is indeed your good brother. The Jiang family and our Gu family have maintained a friendship for generations, and our relationship is quite good. Under this circumstance, my feelings for James gradually warmed, and it was only natural that we ended up together. We always had a great relationship until Emily Su came into the picture during college. Before that, James and I were the recognized couple in Melbourne, a perfect match in terms of social status and appearance. We had been dating for 5 years and were about to step into the realm of marriage. During the engagement ceremony, I initially felt like the happiest woman in the world, but a phone call changed everything. Before the engagement, I had suggested to James to give his phone to his secretary and not to bring it with him to avoid any distractions during the ceremony. He told me that there would be an important phone call. I was still wondering what could be so significant besides our engagement. It turned out he was waiting for a call from Emily. This was indeed very important enough for James to skip our engagement party to be with her. James's phone rang for less than 3 seconds. He glanced at me and ran outside to take the call. I felt a pang in my heart. In Imo City, I don't have many familiar people. Can you accompany me to the hospital for a checkup? Emily's sweet voice came through the phone. I could hear it clearly. I wanted to rush out and ask James who he was talking to, but I didn't expect that I would overhear. In fact, even if I hadn't heard it, he would have told me he was going out. I gave a wry smile and thought to myself, James, could you not go? Today is our engagement ceremony. I begged him to stay. A flicker of hesitation crossed James's eyes, and he frowned, just about to say something when Emily's voice came from the other end of the line. Is this Anna Gu? James, am I interrupting you? It's okay, I might get lost. I am not familiar with at all, I said angrily. Emily, you know very well that today is my engagement day with James. Are you doing this on purpose? You have so many people willing to help you, so why can you only find James now? James quickly hung up the phone, as if he was trying to avoid being scared by my angry shouting. He criticized me for being too harsh on Emily and said I was being too tough on her. After all, she is just a simple girl all alone. True, she is indeed very naive, but naive enough to seduce someone else's boyfriend. James's eyes were filled with concern as he worried about Emily's situation. After the phone and text notifications rang twice, he no longer hesitated and rushed out the door. I called out to James, saying, it was you who wanted to be with me, and it was you who agreed to Gu family's request for an engagement. If you leave here today, don't regret it. James paused for a moment and gently replied, Anna, don't be difficult. Emily is my only friend in Melbourne. I'm going to help her and will be back to get engaged to you right away, I said. James, do you really not understand, or are you just pretending not to? Of course, I wouldn't make a scene. If a man can't do it, then so be it. James's mother noticed what was happening and came over to ask me, what's wrong, Anna? Where is James? My parents also followed out, along with a few close friends. Everyone noticed the change. I suppressed my sadness and calmly replied, it's nothing, Miss Jiang. James's good friend Emily Su is having some trouble, and he went to check on her. Are you just ordinary friends? My mom asked anxiously, immediately picking up on my distress. Tears were welling up in my eyes as I choked out, Mom, this is the last time I'm going to cry for James. I don't intend to continue this engagement. My mother shot a glare at the Jiang family, held me tightly, and gently patted my shoulder, indicating that she wanted to take me home. The Jiang family members were also taken aback by how things had turned out. They didn't want to sever the long-standing friendship with the Gu family. James's mother exchanged a glance with the Jiang family and then said to me, Anna, Miss Jiang will definitely give you an explanation. You are the only daughter-in-law of the Jiang family in my eyes. Tears were still on my face, but inside I couldn't help but sneer. If the Jiang family wanted me to be their daughter-in-law, they better check whether Anna and I were willing. Because of James, the engagement party had turned quite unpleasant, and the attendees were all prominent figures from Ink City. James completely disregarded the feelings of me and the Gu family. It's impossible to say that I wasn't heartbroken after 5 years of relationship. Last night, I got incredibly drunk, and the sound of the doorbell woke me up in the middle of the night. I instinctively thought it was James coming back, and I felt a surge of joy. When I opened the door, however, I saw James's good friend, Daniel Cheng, standing outside, a suitor of Emily's. I frowned, and the joy in my heart transformed into impatience and confusion. What exactly is Daniel doing here? Is he trying to be James's advocate? I asked him, what brings you here? I made an effort to keep my tone calm. Their attraction to Emily is their own business, and I didn't want these little matters to affect my emotions. Daniel's appearance is far more striking than James's, with his sharp eyebrows and captivating eyes that exude a sense of rebellious charm. He is one of the favored sons of the city and, relying on his background and looks, it's natural that he would catch Emily's attention. I vaguely feel that these admirers are somewhat pitiful. Besides her beauty, it seems that Emily relies on their attention to establish herself in Melbourne. Therefore, she doesn't even spare the wealthy young men. She truly acts like a social butterfly. I want to close the door to send them away, but Daniel's deep voice comes through, and his strong arms hold the door in place. I try to shut it, but the door won't budge. His strength is too great for me to resist, and instead, I find myself being pushed open even further. I said bluntly, Daniel, it's pointless for you to persuade James unless he recognizes his mistakes and comes to me for forgiveness. Daniel smiled slightly and replied, I'm not doing this for him, but for you, Anna. For me? I asked. Yes, have you ever considered why you can't marry someone else? Is it really true that you can only marry James? Am I always his second choice? You can be someone else's first choice. Anna, look at me, I'm no worse than James. If there is a difference, it's that I didn't meet you sooner. Daniel's words were sincere and touching, leaving me momentarily confused. Didn't he like Emily? Could he have done this on purpose to humiliate me in front of my goddess? I was just about to say something when my phone rang. It was James calling. I answered cheerfully, only to hear him angrily blaming me on the other end. Anna, what did you say to my mom? As soon as she arrived, she slapped Emily and called her a vixen. Emily has always been well behaved, and you can't let your jealousy lead my mom to scold her. James didn't give me a chance to speak at all. After blowing up, he huffed and puffed, obviously still angry. I was stunned by his outburst for a while when I felt someone stroking my head. It turned out to be Daniel. He answered the phone and asked James, it's me, Daniel. Bro, you're not trying to go after my fiancé just because you can't have Emily, are you? Are you speaking for Emily? James's anger instantly turned to confusion. On the other end of the line, Emily's weak voice came through. Daniel, please don't make it difficult for Anna. It's my fault for coming back to Mexico City at this time and causing you trouble. I scoffed beside her, thinking that this was the man I had loved for 5 years, now talking to his first love. What a disappointment. Daniel gave a disdainful smile and said solemnly, James, I am not like you, fixated on a person who isn't real. After the call ended, Daniel earnestly suggested again, Anna, don't be James's fiancée anymore, become my wife, Daniel. I couldn't understand what he meant by paper person and writer, but the expression on his face made me feel that he had feelings for me. Just then, it started pouring outside. I advised Daniel to hurry home to avoid getting drenched and catching a cold, as it wouldn't be wise to offend the Cheng family and the Gu family. Daniel insisted that he had walked over, and this heavy rain meant he couldn't go back. I realized he was thinking about staying over. I noticed that it was indeed pouring rain outside, and considering that we've known each other since childhood, I didn't want to send him home in such weather. Although the situation was awkward, I ultimately decided to let him stay. Seeing Daniel deliberately putting on a pitiful look, I found it hard to voice my refusal. Daniel's puppy eyes instantly lit up, indicating that Anna didn't actually have any strong aversion towards him, and that there was hope. My mom looked a bit surprised upon seeing the visitor. She was aware of the Cheng family's status in the city. She quietly grabbed my arm and asked, "Anna, are you very close to Daniel? He's the prince of, so you need to take care of yourself." Daniel greeted my aunt warmly. My mom immediately smiled happily. It seems that no matter how old a woman gets, she will always like handsome guys. The young master of the Cheng family, has he gotten married yet? Mom! I hurriedly called out to her, realizing that things were getting more chaotic. She seemed a bit displeased and asked me what was wrong. She thought I was more suited for Daniel. Noticing that my expression wasn't great, Daniel immediately said, "Auntie, I respect Anna's feelings." My mom heard this and immediately reacted decisively, locking Daniel in my room that night. We exchanged glances. Daniel had just taken a shower, and the droplets of water on his skin hadn't been dried yet. Water trickled down his abs, soaking the towel. I quickly looked away, unable to hide the blush on my face. He noticed my reaction, and with a slight smile at the corner of his mouth, he casually said, "Anna, feel free to look, I don't mind." He was silent for a moment, then asked Anna if she wanted to give it a try. I remembered that James had not contacted me at all during the time he was with Emily, and it felt like we had already broken up. I accepted that fact. So, I hesitated and nodded slightly. I admit I couldn't resist the temptation. I didn't sleep well last night, and when I woke up this morning, my whole body felt sore and weak. I groggily picked up my phone and saw that James had several missed calls and a few WeChat messages. The messages were mostly along the lines of, "Anna, don't be upset. I'll come see you as soon as Emily is feeling better." There were also questions asking if I was still mad. After reading them, I didn't reply. At that moment, I heard Daniel's voice behind me. He was awake and his voice was clear. "Why aren't you replying to the messages?" Daniel saw the message that James sent me and chuckled softly. He took out his phone and showed it to me. I glanced at it and noticed that there were over 20 messages from Emily. "Daniel, can I come over to hang out with you? I bought a new dress that I want to show you." "Daniel, are you very busy? You weren't like this before. Even when you were busy, you would still reply to my messages." "Daniel, don't ignore Emily." I felt confused. I remembered that Daniel used to be one of those men who pursued Emily. At that moment, he held me close and gave me a gentle kiss, saying, "Because I've realized that the person I love is different now. The past feels like I was possessed by a ghost." "Anna, let's get married." I looked at him seriously and said, my heart filled with hesitation, "I won't marry you, James. I've promised someone else." Daniel was very efficient, and the wedding was quickly approaching. All the dowry and gold were all accounted for. The wedding of the Prince of sparked widespread discussion. My parents were very pleased with the Cheng family and Daniel's arrangements, and they finally felt assured about marrying me off. "My precious daughter has found a good home." Daniel invited all the influential figures in the city, including the Jiang family. Before sending out the invitations, he asked for my opinion and whether I minded. I shook my head. My grievances with James are in the past and will not affect the Jiang family's participation in the celebrations of the Cheng and Gu families. It's just the right moment for him to see that I can find something even better after I leave. James brought Emily along, and I have to admit that she is indeed beautiful. Her outfit cost James quite a bit of money, but he seems to enjoy it. However stunning Emily may be, the bride in a wedding dress today is the most beautiful of all. I am the most beautiful bride today. When they came over to offer their wedding congratulations to Daniel, they discovered that the bride by his side was me, Anna. Emily exclaimed, "Oh my goodness! Anna is marrying Daniel." As soon as she said this, the atmosphere around us instantly became tense. James fixed his gaze on me and hoarsely asked, "When you left that day, did you really say that our relationship was over? And then you got together with Daniel? Seeing that I won't get engaged to you, are you going to seek out the crown prince of Mo City instead?" He mocked coldly, but I remained silent. Noticing my indifference to his words, he put on a pitiful expression. Choking back tears, he said, "Anna, I am your fiancé." After saying that, he tried to take my hand, his movements appearing even more submissive than when I had pleaded with him. At the same time, Emily leaned towards my husband Daniel and said playfully, "Daniel, could you not marry Anna? Don't you love me the most? After you break up with her, I'll allow you to kiss me. I was surprised that some women could be so self-deprecating. I chose to remain silent, wanting to see how Daniel would respond. Daniel shot a cold glance at Emily and said, "Please have some self-respect, your partner is him." He then turned his gaze to James. James noticed Emily's behavior and forcefully held on to her, questioning, "Didn't you say I was your favorite? I gave up my engagement ceremony with my fiancé to be here with you, and yet you're trying to flirt with another guy?" Emily felt a bit of pain from James's grip and immediately attempted to break free from his hold. She said, "You hurt me. It's not my fault that your girlfriend is marrying someone else. Right now, I like Daniel." I looked at them arguing in front of me with a sense of impatience. So, I linked my arm with Daniel's, smiled at him, and then said to the two of them, "Thank you for coming to my wedding with Daniel. I'm now pregnant with Daniel's child, so it's a double celebration. You can prepare double the gifts and go downstairs for the banquet," I said. After hearing my words, James's face turned pale, still thinking that I was doing this in hopes of changing his mind. His eyes were bloodshot, and he looked somewhat terrifying, causing me to instinctively retreat behind Daniel. Upon noticing my movement, his expression twisted even further, and he said, "Anna, I was wrong. I was deceived by her. There's nothing between us. The one I have always loved is you. I understand now, late love really has no meaning." Daniel was somewhat impatient about this. After all, it was the only wedding of his life, and he didn't want these two to disrupt it. He coldly glanced at Emily and said in a serious tone, "I remember that Miss Sue doesn't come from a particularly good family. If you provoke me again, I won't hesitate to let everyone know about your past." Upon hearing this, Emily's expression changed drastically. She knew that Daniel meant what he said. Her mother had once been a street worker, and Emily had gone through tough times herself before meeting Daniel, which changed her life. Therefore, she chose not to pursue a connection with the Crown Prince of Mo City and instead sought after James. Seeing the various aspects of her past made Emily reluctant to let her future partner hold any leverage over her. Thinking of this, she shot a fierce glare at Daniel. This person was someone she couldn't afford to offend, regardless of his status or position, and it was evident that he no longer had any interest in her. Looking at James again, he was only thinking about pursuing his former fiancée and had completely lost interest in her. She felt angry and questioned the system. "Didn't you say I am the heroine of this book? How did I end up being defeated by the supporting actress?" The system, somewhat helpless, explained, "It's not my fault. It would be great if the heroine followed the plot of the story. The male lead is Daniel, but he happens to be pursuing the male second character associated with the supporting actress. It seems that the characters in the book have developed their own consciousness, and Emily's awakening is driven by a desire to take what belongs to others." I watched Emily talk to herself over there and quietly poked Daniel's arm, saying, "Did your earlier words hit her hard? Just look at her now." Daniel affectionately ruffled my hair and laughed. "I never realized you enjoyed the excitement so much." I pouted and replied, "How can I not? This is the center of gossip." Throughout this, both of us completely forgot about James, who was collapsing beside us, as we indulged in our affectionate display. Until I noticed that there was something off about James's gaze. My God, he wouldn't want us to perish together, would he? I just found my favorite man. I really don't want it to end this way. Daniel patted my hand to comfort me, then said to James, "James, this is the last time I'm going to call you that." The three families have known each other for generations and have always had a close relationship. After Emily's appearance, the relationship between you and me has grown somewhat distant. Let's not dwell on the past. Today is Anna and my wedding, and I hope you can be a bit more self-aware. Daniel looked at me with deep affection, and I couldn't help but blush. He really is very charming. Just as we were smiling at each other and enjoying the pleasant atmosphere, an unexpected turn of events happened. Nobody knew where James had found a fruit knife. He was too afraid to take action against the Prince of Mo City and instead came at me. I instinctively protected my belly, not expecting gentle James to turn out like this. The knife was getting closer, and I lost consciousness. James laughed maniacally, saying, "Haha, let's go to hell together as a loving couple." When I woke up, I immediately checked my belly. It was fine, and I didn't feel any pain. What was going on? Seeing my confusion, the nurse explained, you're not injured, but Daniel is hurt quite badly. He's in the surgical ward next door. Is Daniel hurt? I recalled the scene just before I fainted. James rushed at me with a knife, and Daniel instinctively reached out to shield me from the blade. Ignoring the drip in my hand, I tried to get out of bed to see him. The nurse hurriedly stopped me and advised, Mrs. Cheng, you just experienced a shock and are at risk for complications. You need to rest. I pushed past the nurse and slowly walked toward Daniel's hospital room. He was awake, conversing with a lawyer. I stood quietly outside the door, thinking that Daniel might like me, but I never expected that he would take a blade for me. When Daniel sent the lawyer away, he noticed me and frowned with concern, asking, Why are you up? You need to rest and recuperate. Why aren't you listening? Before he could finish, I ran into his arms and began to cry, completely shedding any image of a lady. Daniel understood my emotions and simply sighed in resignation, saying, It's okay, Anna. I'm fine. I looked up and wiped my tears, noticing that his wound was tightly stitched, yet there were still traces of blood seeping through. It seemed that after the stitching, there wasn't much to worry about. I asked with concern, Does it hurt? Daniel raised an eyebrow and smiled, as if to say he wasn't the type to fear pain. To him, this little injury was nothing. I knew he was joking, not wanting me to worry too much. I asked him again, James must go to prison. How do you plan to handle this? Daniel looked at me seriously and asked if I really wasn't going to plead for him. Angrily, I replied that he had severely injured my man, and letting him live was already being very generous. Daniel nodded slightly, indicating that he wasn't being lenient. He intended for the Jiang family to go bankrupt, and for James to be sentenced to 10 years. I was left stunned. Indeed, the Prince of Mekong was ruthless. I have always felt uneasy about Emily. Daniel noticed my thoughts and gently patted my head, saying, Don't worry, I've already sent that woman back to where she belongs. I looked at Daniel with newfound respect. He really knew how to deal with people. The one thing Emily wanted to keep hidden was her background, and now it would be difficult for her to escape from this shame. Daniel pulled me into his arms, and his gaze gradually became fervent. I nudged him, reminding him that we were in a hospital and he was still injured. I might have accidentally touched his wound, and he let out a sudden gasp of pain. I froze, hesitant to move, and then he seized the opportunity. A glint of cunning flashed in his eyes as he leaned closer to me. A few days later, Daniel and I were discharged from the hospital. I went to visit James in prison. It had been a week since I last saw him, and he seemed to have aged quite a bit, with unshaven stubble on his face. James saw that I had come to visit and awkwardly lowered his head, unable to meet my gaze. I stroked my belly, looking at him and reminding him of what I had said when we got engaged. Once you walk out that door, there's no turning back. In an instant, James's expression shifted to one of awkwardness, mixed with a hint of regret. He spoke up, his voice sounding weary. I'm sorry, Anna. I don't know what happened that day. I was too impulsive. Are you all right? I shook my head and suddenly remembered what Emily had said to the heir earlier. I asked him, Did you hear anything about the protagonist and the supporting character that Emily mentioned that day? James shook his head in confusion, seemingly unaware of anything. It seemed that those strange words were meant for me alone. James, I no longer hold any resentment towards you. I am very happy now. I hope you can work hard for a reduced sentence and start a new life as soon as possible. I'm here to tell you that I have made peace with my past. Clinging to the past has been far too cruel for me. Just before the visitation call ended, James made a gesture to me. I brought the phone back to my ear and heard James's voice filled with regret. Anna, I regret it. I hope you find happiness forever. I didn't respond. I simply hung up the phone and informed the guard that my visit was over. As I left, I glanced back at James. He was being led away by the officer, looking helpless, like a lost child. I seemed to catch a fleeting glimpse of the bright smile he used to have when we were younger, the smile of the James I had always loved. But his figure gradually faded away, ultimately disappearing from the small room in the prison. Once outside, I looked up at the sky, and a tear slid down my cheek, perhaps as a tribute to the youth I had lost. Mrs. Cheng, are you feeling sentimental again? I just set up a small table on the bay window at home, poured myself some hot tea, and the room felt warm. We were wearing our pajamas, watching the snow outside together. Daniel walked over and gently wrapped his arms around my gradually curvy waist. I am Daniel. Everyone calls me the Prince of Mo City because my family is the wealthiest in Mo City. I used to think my life was smooth sailing, but suddenly I realized that it seemed to be following a fixed routine all along. So, I began to feel like a character in a book, where the narrative told me I was the male protagonist. At that moment, the system indicated that my consciousness had awakened. The reason for this awakening was that I, the Prince of Mo City, had been toyed with by a woman of low status. Clearly, I should have always loved my first love, Anna, but some author had decided to write that I fell for Emily, who showed up out of nowhere. In reality and fundamentally, it was impossible for me to fall in love with someone like her. At Anna and James's engagement party, I realized my feelings. In that moment, I clenched my fists, truly wishing I could take Anna for myself. Just when I thought I might be out of luck with Anna, James became infatuated with someone named Emily. Since he didn't treasure Anna, I felt no need to hold back. I approached Anna and discovered that her understanding of me was limited to being one of Emily's admirers. I didn't plan to explain myself, as the heir of Mock City has always let his actions speak for themselves. That day, it happened to rain heavily. I made an excuse that I couldn't go home, so I stayed at Anna's place, and as a result, we became intimate. I felt very excited and tried to be as gentle as possible with Anna, not wanting her to have any bad feelings. Later, I proposed marriage, and Anna agreed. However, a small incident occurred at the wedding, and James felt regretful. I had finally married the girl I wanted. There was no way I would let her go to someone else. James went insane and stabbed me, but it's not a big deal. What matters is that Anna and the kids are safe. Another winter has arrived, and I'm tightly embracing the girl I love, no longer feeling cold.